Hi, this is Brian Passion. Welcome to another exciting podcast. I am excited to have Doug Betts on the show. JD Powers, we're going to learn a lot about what's new there. And Doug's the president of Automotive and Dealer Solutions. And I wanted to have Doug on the show because JD Power recently went through a reorg, and dealers should know really what their strategy is to help dealers solve problems. And I think one point right out of the gate, Doug, is you've had a long history in automotive. So would
Mhm.
you give our listeners a little bit of that thumbnail of where you started and why you're excited to be in this role right now?
Oh yeah. So I'm one of those people that, I think I was probably 5 years old or something, that all the toys were laid out in front of me and there were Hot Wheels and I grabbed the Hot Wheels and I never put them down. So for whatever reason, I mean, one of my first childhood memories was I saw a 1968 Camaro. It was blue with a white stripe down the middle. And I, stood up in the front seat of my parents' car because, they didn't have child seats back then. And I said, "What is that?" And my dad told me, and then, I was hooked on cars. So, like, and my argument has always been, you shouldn't be in the automotive business if you don't love cars. That
Mm,
because it's hard. It's a tough business, very competitive. If you don't love
sure is.
cars, why would you go through all of that, sort of torture? So went to school at Georgia Tech, mechanical engineer. Went straight to actually Flint, Michigan, working for General Motors. Worked in a factory that made um, transmission components, shafts, and gears. A pretty tough environment. I lived there
Right.
when the movie Roger and Me was filmed, if you remember that.
Yes.
And all the things that were in that film, I like saw them in person in real life. I went from there, worked for Michelin Tire in South Carolina for several years, process engineer, quality engineer. So again, working in manufacturing, I was exposed to a lot of data. The factory that I worked at made a tire about every 5 seconds, and every tire had about 200 characteristics that were measured. So you can imagine in a 24/7 operation would shut down 1 week a year, how much data came out of that. And that was at the time when collecting data was like a new thing. I mean,
Right.
computers were just coming into the workspace. And so I was really exposed to that and learned a lot about how you can do things with a lot of data, which has been helpful to me, throughout my career. And
Well, for sure now more than ever.
yeah, right. And so went from there to Toyota, started up a new Toyota plant, the very first generation Toyota Tundra. I was head of quality engineering for that product. And then we added the Sequoia and we built another plant, the Sienna. So I was head of quality for vans, pickup trucks, and minivans or SUVs, full-size SUVs at Toyota. Went to Nissan. I was recruited to Nissan. I was head of quality for Nissan and Infiniti for North and South America. Actually worked directly for a guy named Carlos Ghosn, who a lot of people
Yes.
know Carlos Ghosn. Interesting story there.
Yes. That's another podcast.
Yeah, yeah, we could do that. And then I was recruited by Chrysler when, Daimler divested Chrysler to a private equity company called Cerberus, which is Cerberus is the name of the three-headed dog that guards the gates of hell. So that should have
That should
been
have been a warning right
yeah.
there.
But I went there. We went bankrupt. I wasn't responsible for that. We went bankrupt shortly after I got there, and then we were married to Fiat, and I worked for a guy named Sergio Marchioni, also a pretty famous CEO.
For
Uh,
sure.
and so over those years, I learned a lot about the auto industry. But as you can tell from the story, it was on the OEM side. So I know a lot about automakers. I mean, I've been a part of the managing, executive committee at two different car companies at the highest level. And of course, dealers are a part of that, but dealers were I was on the dealer council, I knew the guys who were the dealer council members and had lots of great conversations with some of those people and still stay in touch with many of them. But I wasn't on that side of the business, but very aware of the, the issues between
That's right.
car makers and the people who sell the cars for the car makers. So I did do a brief stint at Apple, which is always interesting, between Chrysler and JD Power. I worked for Apple for 2 years. I was head of quality for all the computers and Apple TV. Uh,
Ooh.
Launched the Apple Pencil, which is a very complicated, looks like it wouldn't be, but inside of there is a bunch of stuff. And I was there to make a car. And that's where I learned that I had no passion for computers. I use an Apple computer. I think it's great. But, I don't run my hands over it and look at it with love. People who work at Apple do.
They
I
do.
I
Yeah.
did. And so when I got approached to join JD Power, I was ready to get back to the place where, the place that I love, which is the auto industry.
Right. And think about it. JD Power is really at the intersection of dealer needs and OEM needs.
Yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to really communicate in this podcast and kind of develop is what JD Powers is focused on right now for the dealers. And I think as I talk to dealers, it's this still idea, JD Powers, they're the trophy, company. And as you and I have talked about all the things that you're working on, JD Powers way more than just trophies. So for the dealers listening in,
Mhm.
what's one or two things before we get into the products and the divisions? What's one or two things that you think dealers at retail level maybe miss or misunderstand about JD Power?
Yeah, I think our the brand of the company is really well known. I mean, it's hard to find somebody that you say, "Have you ever heard of JD Power?" and they say, "I've never heard of it." I mean, they've all heard
Right.
of it. Primarily, that's because of the we call it the benchmarking business, which is how the company was founded. Dave Power started this business as a research company or survey company and benchmarking the quality of service and the quality of product for the automotive industry, which has been really important to the automotive industry in this
Yeah.
country. But today, what percentage of our business is that? It's like 10%,
Wow.
um, and it's valuable to us. The interesting thing about that part of the business is JD Power has not spent a dollar, as far as I know, on marketing the company.
Mm.
What happens is, a car company wins the best full-size truck or whatever in JD Power. They come to us and they say, how much will you charge us to advertise that we won? How much are we going to pay you so that we can advertise your brand to a national audience? And they've built the awareness of JD Power through that arrangement, which is, if you can do that in life, it's a good thing to have somebody pay you to advertise your brand.
That's amazing in itself.
Yeah, yeah, it's a miraculous thing. I think you got to be kind of the first person to come up with the idea to be able to get that done, but it was done. So, but for the most part, we are a data company now. And, one of the things that Dave Power pursued was to he wanted to build some, repository of transaction data to help understand how the market works. And we use that data, we call it PIN data. We use that to help the OEMs decide what incentives they need to offer. This is
Mhm.
really helpful to the dealers because having sat in incentive meetings at OEMs, I can tell you there's a lot of wild ideas that swirl around. But when you have the data from JD Power, they can really make a clear good decision
Right.
on what to offer to make some cars sell, right? And that helps the dealers to clear their lots and things like that. Um, But we,
So let's talk about this concept that I'm not going to say double down, but the Dealer Solutions division,
mhm,
which is your
yeah,
business,
right.
your responsibility now. Um, you made a comment that you're focused on helping dealers make more money.
Hmm.
So everyone says that. Everyone goes into a dealer and say, "Hey, I want to help you make more money." So, dealers listening in know maybe just a piece of your product portfolio, not the whole portfolio. But before we talk about products, how do you think JD Power fits in? Being a data company, being a tech company, fits into helping a dealer who's trying to reimagine their tech stack, trying to reimagine their go to market. What would you tell a dealer you meet at a conference? Hey, I think I can help you by approaching the business this way. What would you tell them?
Well, I've gone to NADA before in my OEM life, and when when it got to the past the brand to make meetings or whatever, and I was presenting, whatever's going on, um, I went out on the floor a couple times, and I looked around. I was like, boy, there's a lot of stuff out here. And then I went to the airport and I left. And this year, in this role of the dealer solutions part of our business, I went there and I stayed, and we had a booth. And, on our booth, we had a second floor where you could get up there and you could kind of look out over the floor. And I thought, holy cow, look at all this stuff. And I walked around and I talked to people and look at all these claims of what can be done. And, being a data guy like I am and having very, very detailed data on a lot of subjects from the automotive industry, I would talk to some of these people and I'd say, well, what's your source for this or whatever? And it was all a little bit fuzzy. And I can tell fuzz from the real stuff because
Right, right.
I got the real stuff in my bag here. And I thought, boy, this has got to be so tough for a dealer to come out. Not, even just like separating the stories from the reality, but how do all the pieces fit together, right? Because this
That's right.
company has made a puzzle piece that's shaped like this, and this one's like that, and there's either gaps or you're paying for overlaps. And I really felt like, boy, I wouldn't want to be out here shopping for stuff because to sort through all that's very difficult. I
Yeah, and
yeah,
and and Doug, the fact is that most dealers don't have a rich data team,
no,
development team, integration team, and because of the complexity of the tech stack, because of the lack of open APIs, because of the walled gardens of data, dealers need to be able to trust somebody, right, that
yeah,
can help them put everything together.
yeah.
And one of the things that I would imagine is through your data, your tech, and your insights, there has to be a lot of waste that can be eliminated, right?
Oh,
I mean, but who's going to help a dealer navigate that?
yeah. So we're creating solutions that address really large sources of waste. And we have the data to be able to do it. And I'll give you an example. We hold an event every year called the JD Power Summit. It's the
Yes.
before NADA starts. And actually, I was talking with Mike Stanton, who's the head of NADA, and I was telling him, we've made this tool using our data where we can look at a, 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 a model, a brand and a model, and we can look at all of the different versions of that car. I won't name a car because I don't want anybody, mad at me or whatever. But you know, car SUV X, and let's say there's 1,200 different versions of this SUV. 1,200 different versions, and that's not counting color. That's just like you could say, oh, this
Different
one, yeah,
configurations.
configuration. So this one looks, oh no, wait a minute. This one's got heated seats in the rear and that one doesn't. So 1,200 different versions that are sold. And no dealer is going to have 1,200 different versions. So it's not a real choice for shoppers because we sell from stock in this country. And so somebody's going to come into the lot. Every dealer's going to have seven or eight and then plus colors. And the person's going to end up taking what they take, or they're going to go, across the street because they like that car. But, I really wanted a heated steering wheel and they don't have one. So I'm going to go over here. And so this is happening all the time, and we have the data to see that that is happening because we have configuration data across the whole industry, and we have transaction data, so we know what cars are selling for, whether the dealer made a profit or not. We know how many days it was on the lot before it sold, and we can look across the industry and see uh, cars that are hot and cars that are dogs. And we can see where too, because a car that's a dog in Houston might be red hot in New Jersey, but it
Right.
got ordered to go to Houston. So there it sits, taking up space, you're paying floor plan on it, and ending up having to compromise on the price to get it gone. And so we're working on a tool that will help dealers to order cars that are the
Ooh.
right car for their market. It'll turn fast. You'll have throughput.
So if they're picking seven configurations, you're going to say these are the 10 configurations that will work in your market for your customer base for your brand.
Yeah, and it's based on data. It's not based on like it's not that where I'm not any smarter than anybody else, but the market is always right. And if you can look at what the market's doing, then you're making the right decision if you're doing what the market wants.
Doug, what about service? I mean, how much data do you have on service? One of the things that every dealer I talk to is having a problem with getting techs, getting experienced techs. So I'm trying to figure out how could you help a dealer who has more newbies than experienced people, in the service lanes. They're trying to be profitable. Where can JD Power eliminate waste in the service drive?
So this is a subject that I'm incredibly passionate about, based on my past. I ran the warranty, for three different car companies, at least part of three. So you're talking about $1.5 billion a year spend for a regular car company on warranty. And this issue of the time it takes to fix a car. I mean, it's a constant source of friction because the OEM doesn't want to pay more than they have to because it's just an expense. And on the other hand, the dealer's left with like, hey, this car comes in, you just launched it. It's got all these problems, never seen them before. You have to be a mad scientist to be able to figure out what's really wrong with the car. The OEM's not in a position to help at the launch of a vehicle. So we have in JD Power, we have repair data for, right now, it's a quarter of every car that's repaired in the United States. We have everything about those repairs.
But that's a large enough sample set to be
Yeah,
predictive.
that's a huge sample. It's plenty. And
Right.
so we've normalized that data because what you call a water pump on a Toyota, it's got a different name on a Ford or whatever. So we normalized the names of the components. We've normalized the names of the labor operations, all that stuff. So you can look across the industry. That's helpful for OEMs because OEMs may have a big problem. Like I thought we were pretty good on battery warranty at one of the companies I worked at until I saw what somebody else's battery warranty was, and I realized
Okay.
terrible. So we needed to work on that as a big opportunity. But on the dealer side, because of the latest technology, I mean, I hate to say AI because everybody says AI, but the fact is this is an incredible new technology. AI can read language and it can turn unstructured data like customer said this and blah 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 into structured data, and then it can start learning from that. And so we have not completed this product, but it's something that's really near and dear to my heart and I think can bring a lot of value to auto dealers is we can teach AI that when, looking at all the data we have, somebody comes in, they've got a brand new, Model whatever. I say Model X, that's actually a car, but
Right.
and it's making a wind noise, and wind noise is hard to figure out sometimes. And you just tell service advisor just types in customer has this 2020 blah blah blah, has a wind noise, sounds like it's coming from the back. Type it in. AI will go and look at every repair on that car that's been made in the whole
That's amazing.
example, and it'll say, "Hey, I know all the repairs that have been made, and I know which ones worked because I've also watched the cars that were repaired to see if they came back. And if any of them came back and the customer said, 'Hey, you didn't fix it,' then I take that repair off the list of ones that worked."
Right.
It's incredible. It's an incredible capability. It will get, we have a shortage of technicians. You can just tell a technician, "Hey, replace the weather strip on the passenger side door. There's a problem. It's been seen before. That will fix this problem." So I'm pretty excited
I
about.
mean, people, are, somewhat, I don't know, divided on the power of AI. But in this particular case, really absorbing tons of transactional data,
Mhm.
factual data, and then saying, oh, based on what you're typing me,
Yeah,
it looks like this repair. I mean, that's a huge time saver. I mean, that could, for some jobs, that could save a half an hour of
yeah,
someone's, discovery time. And dealers who are listening in are saying, wow, I didn't even know JD Power could do that.
yeah.
Let's go into an area where dealers are familiar, Darwin, and in what I would say F&I area.
Hmm.
So we have the DMSC conference coming up.
Yeah,
JD Power is going to be there. There's going to be a chance for dealers to lean in and learn a little bit more. What's new about the dealer products like a Darwin, like an F&I products? What can you tell dealers who you know, may want to learn a little bit more about the innovation in there because it is significant?
yeah. So, to give a little bit of the history of J Power since I joined in February of 2017. We were still relatively small compared to where we are now. We went on an acquisition spree over the next 6 or 7 years. What we didn't do was we didn't do a very thorough job of integrating what we bought. So using Darwin as an example, a great company. We acquired the company,
Great product.
great product, leading the industry. Um, all of our decisions on acquisition were sort of, we said, would we buy it if there were no synergies? And so we didn't buy anything that wasn't standalone worth buying. And Darwin certainly was one of those. But we also had a list of things that we could do, but we didn't do them. So we bought Darwin.
And by the way, you're not the only you're not the only company
Yeah,
that's been on a buying spree and then took a breather
yeah,
and said, "Hey, it's time to patch these pieces together."
yeah. And our organization was product centric. So the people who ran Darwin, they only thought about Darwin, and I could go on and on with other companies we acquired, et cetera. We have reorganized. We did it through the fall of this last year, where we are customer focused, and that's where I got this new role because I was more on the OEM side before with certain products that I worked with the OEMs on. So we are customer focused. So if anything we can do for dealers or for dealer service providers, I own that. Doesn't matter what product it used to be or whatever, I own that. And my goal is to help dealers make money, make more money, eliminate waste. And so for Darwin, Darwin has had the opportunity to benefit from the data that was on the JD Power side, but
Hmm.
we did not take advantage of that. So that's in process. So I would say the most impactful thing that's going to come in the Darwin menu and other products that are in that part of the business later on this year is going to be taking advantage of all that data to make Darwin much more effective because the biggest waste that we have on the dealer side is the lower funnel. you spend billions of dollars to load the funnel at the top, and I had a front row seat to all that at OEMs. And then by the time you get to the bottom, there's only like 8% left. And that there's just not a lot of data-based work going on in that part of the funnel to make that get bigger. And
Right.
so for the F&I sale, which is a very important and profitable,
Super.
product, I want to make that funnel bigger. More people you offer to them, more people buy it instead of saying, I'm not sure, because it wasn't the right offer for them or whatever. With data science, we can leverage the data we have and make offers that are much more appealing to the customers, and we'll make that funnel bigger at the bottom.
So, in your responsibility set, you'll be responsible then fixed ops, variable ops, and F&I. Anything that falls in those kind of general buckets.
In fact, yeah, I mean, my computer desk is as cluttered as my physical desk. I've got a slide that I always keep open, which is every department in a dealer. And my goal is that I am constantly thinking about how can I help the parts department to sell more parts? How do I help the service department to sell more, service? How do I help the F&I office to sell more F&I products? How do I make it easier for somebody to get the loan paid off on a trade-in and retitled in their name so they can put it right back out on the lot and sell it? We actually have a partner product that we're just getting ready to launch. I'll be talking about it at the event next week, where you click a button and you pay, a nominal fee, and the trade-in gets paid off and the title gets moved into the dealer's name, and they can put the car out on the lot. So stuff like that, because of the size of our company, we can find those, even if it's a smaller company that's created a capability, we can find it that fits right in the F&I office, right? The person
Right.
giving you the keys to their trade-in and stuff like that. We're going to be all over doing, just making everything easier, faster, cheaper, and turning in.
What about areas like identity fraud? I see this pop up every once in a while. Um, the ability for AI to,
Yeah,
create documents that look real. I
yeah,
mean, someone was saying, like, look what I just produced, and everything looked like, holy cow, like
yeah,
at the edge of printing cash. We know that that's a federal offense, so we're not talking about that. But what about synthetic fraud, or, what they're doing to
yeah.
protect the dealer? How can JD Power help?
Yeah, we actually have another, sort of partnership with a small company, and because we have all this footprint with dealers, with Darwin in particular, there's a company that we are now rolling out that you can scan the ID, and it goes and it finds out, is that a real person with a real history and a real, the FICO score is real, and it makes sense that they're buying a new car. Yeah, that's another piece, and it makes perfect sense for it to be in the F&I workflow, right? So
For sure.
that's another one, and it's a click, and you pay $1 or whatever it is, and you can be sure you're giving a loan to somebody who's gonna be good for it.
Best dollar spent. Doug, for dealers who may not have had a relationship with a JD Power employee, when you talk about helping them save money, eliminate waste, expand the funnel
Mhm,
at the bottom,
mhm.
um, would a dealer call and be assigned like a local rep? Or is most of this coaching, consulting, analytics, analysis of their data done remotely? Is it a field team? What does that look like today for a dealer who says, hey, I need help cleaning up my tech stack?
Yeah. Um, I don't, it's not, we don't have a massive field team. So, what we're trying to do to address the issue that you're talking about is to either create products ourselves that are maybe a more clean puzzle piece, like
Okay,
it goes from this to this, and it makes sense, that could be easy to understand where it begins and where it ends, to be using best in class data so that what it does, because everything we do is about understanding the market from data so that when it gives, advice or direction to the customer, that's the best direction you could get to, in the end, open the funnel on whatever it is you're selling. And so we're working on those things where we see the biggest opportunities. Our stated mission is, and we've changed the logo,
Mhm.
the color is different, I mean, and that came with a statement, which is we want to power every automotive decision. And the way you power automotive decisions is with data that tells you you should go right, not left, because right is
Right.
a better path for you. So yeah, it's less of a because supposedly there's 17,000 new car franchise rooftops out there. If I hire people to go knock on those doors, then the price of what I do for you is going to have to go sky high. So I would rather create solutions for like problems that everybody has. We do market some through partners like, the big DMS providers. The stuff that we have, they say, hey, we'll help you sell this. Of course they want a little something for their trouble, but that's fine,
Right.
and so that's kind of how we go to market.
So dealers can reach out,
Yeah,
talk about their
absolutely.
needs, their gaps.
Hmm.
Your consultants will show how these new product sets or enhanced features can eliminate waste, help them do their job more efficiently. And I love that summary because it may seem obvious. Dealers are entrepreneurs
Hmm.
and they're successful for the most part, but there's a lot of things that are changing. And
Yeah.
just like you said, as you surveyed from the second story of the JD Power booth, things are getting a little bit more complicated. And obviously, dealers call me for clarification. It's also good that your team is somebody they can call on to get, clarity. I also like the fact that you see the whole, data path from the OEM out to the marketing into the dealership and into the final sale. So I want to encourage some of my more advanced listeners who are building their own CDPs or their data lakes. They're trying to build their own AI decisioning tool set. What you just heard today is that there are some very unique data sets that JD Power has that may fit in, depending on the size of your group, into creating a bespoke solution for your dealer group, especially dealers of scale. When you start having 50 plus stores, the amount of revenue that service is generating, right? The number of dollars you're spending on marketing can sometimes be a little blinding. And you should know that JD Power has solutions, right? Data as a service, products as a solution, and also that coaching we're talking about to kind of streamline those processes. Doug, as you're thinking about the year ahead, dealers have a lot of inventory sitting on their lots. Gas prices are now going up. We got all sorts of crazy things going on. When you look at your team, your new organization, your product set, what are you most excited about that a dealer listening in, you know, would also get excited about? To basically to align your vision with their needs, what are you seeing in the marketplace where you're the most excited about helping dealers at tier three?
Well, there's more than one thing. I would just say, I hope I can do a good job or a better job in this space with bringing clarity of a particular thing. I mean, this is something that having worked at Toyota, Nissan, and Chrysler, and set aside some of the others, um, what I've seen is that the companies, and this would apply to an individual dealer or a dealer group, the companies that don't expose themselves to uh, understanding where they are compared to to competitors. And in order to do that, you have to have access to industry-wide data, which is
That's right.
we never get data unless we're going to get it industry-wide. I don't want it for a part of the market for anything. Doesn't work for me. And being able open to and seeing, hey, I'm good and I'm making good money, and we're all kind of happy, but in this particular area, there's somebody out there, and it may be I may have to keep it anonymous, but
Right.
there's somebody out there that's like twice as good as me. That shouldn't make me unhappy or embarrassed. It shouldn't, it might make you mad. I don't know, but it should tell you that's an area that if I roll up my sleeves, I can find a way to make more money, to be better, to
Right.
be able to share it with everybody around me, whatever. And the companies that I've worked for, good and bad companies, and the companies that were good were always looking for what's wrong. And, companies like Toyota, which are great, they were always looking for what they could be better at. They were never kicked back, top of the mountain, look at all those losers down below. Never happened. They were always looking for what could we be better? Who's better than us at this
Mm.
thing so that we can figure out why. And so, in a nutshell, what I'm excited about is bringing that thinking along with all this industry-wide data to the dealer side of the house. Because I don't think that, I think a lot of this stuff is smoke and mirrors, like I said, when I walked the floor at NADA. Good stuff, could be helpful, but I'm out to show you, hey, here's where you're at, and here is like what it could be if it was the best. And this may be your biggest
Yeah.
opportunity to get better at this.
Moving the goalposts.
Yes.
You know, I love that, Doug, because honestly, I'm going to agree with you. The best consulting relationships I have is when I go into a dealer and I don't go in and say, "Oh, yeah, it's so great to be here at the number one,
Hmm.
Toyota store." And I mean, I don't open up like that because they don't want to hear that. Here's what Brian, what am I missing? How can I
Hmm.
get better? And I love the fact that as more and more sophisticated dealers are using data to drive decisions, not emotions,
Yeah.
JD Power can bring the data that they don't have, meaning they're seeing you have the market data, the market details, the analytics, the summaries that they could leverage. And I don't think many dealers fully understood this. So, Doug, I really want to
Yeah.
appreciate your time to sit down with me,
Yeah.
especially as you are going through this, new organizational structure, new opportunities. I want to encourage all the dealers listening in. If you're coming to DMSC in Arizona on the 26th, 27th, 28th of April, a number of the JD Power team are there. Sit down with them, talk about the areas where you believe you could get better, see where the data sets, products, and services align up. Don't miss that. And then if you are unable to come out to the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference, keep in mind that as you're doing strategic planning, as you're doing goal setting, as you're looking for advice, instead of just picking the consultant you've been using who may not have the robust data set that JD Powers has, or definitely doesn't have the robust data set that JD Power has, why don't you bring them into the loop? That's what I want to encourage. And Doug, on the JD Power website, is there a specific section? Is there like an automotive solutions section? Where would they go to like fill out a lead or make a call? What's the best way for that initial reach out to look like?
You can get on the website and you can fill out a lead and say I'm interested in this, and it'll get to the right person, and somebody will call you or email you back or whatever. Yeah, definitely.
Great. Well, I want to thank everyone for listening in. Doug, again, thanks for your time. I want to encourage everyone listening that this is just one in a series of recent podcasts leading up to the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference, where dealers come to evaluate their tech stack, their marketing strategy, their customer communication strategy. And if you didn't pick this up through our conversation, dealers are getting smart with data management. They're buying third-party data, enhancing their first-party data, creating better models specific to their business and local market. In order to do that, you got to work with the best of the best, the highest quality data. JD Power fits that bill. So if you want to raise the competency level at your dealership on data management, come out to the DMSC conference. You can go to digitalmarketingstrategies.org and get your tickets. It's in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona at the Westin Kierland Resort. And if you can't make this one, don't forget in November, we have the Modern Retailing Conference in, well, beautiful Palm Beach, Florida. Good time of the year, Doug. November starts to get cold around the U.S., and people come to Palm Beach and they're like, man, this is nice weather.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's a good place to be. Well, thanks everyone for listening in. Hope to see you in Arizona. Until next time, continue on your fight. And we are here to help you sell more cars in a digital age. Have a great day.
Bye.